Hey guys, so one of the questions I'm asked most frequently is how do I become the best version of myself? You guys have been asking me this over and over and over. And I think that most people fail to become their best version because the question itself is in fact extremely complex and we're not looking nearly close enough. And so in this video, we're going to go on a literal journey. We're going to completely deconstruct this question, look at it from multiple angles and via the lens of actual experience, my experience. And then we're going to put it all back together in a way that I believe you will dramatically benefit from if your goal is to become your best version. Now guys, if you've already seen some of my videos, you probably already know what to expect here, but if you're new to the channel, I'm going to warn you, this is not a top 10 things that you need to become the best version of yourself type video. This is not a video for people with 3-minute attention spans. This is not a blueprint. I have nothing to sell you at the end. So if that's what you're looking for, I would honestly recommend just don't watch this video. I am a fellow human who is moving along the same path as many of you, but probably a little further along. And I'm working really hard to understand, observe, put into words how I went from me to the me that I wanted to be in an authentic way that you can relate to, that can help you on your path. I think that if you really understand that, and you're currently trying to be your best version, that you're about to experience something unlike anything you've ever experienced that can really help you. And so I say with as much humility as possible that I do feel that I'm pretty close to my best version, at least in the sense that I presently am a lot of the things that I only previously wanted to be. So in the last few years, I moved to a new country, I learned to dance salsa and speak Spanish, I started a business and have grown it to over 40 employees. I've completely transformed my physical, my mental, my nutrition. I accomplish every goal that I set out to accomplish. I don't procrastinate. I experience negative emotions in a way that works to my benefit. And the most important thing is that I feel fulfilled with what I'm doing. Again, I am a lot of the things that I only previously wanted to be. So I think if you're watching this video and one of your goals is to move from your current version to move closer to whatever your best version is, not mine, not anyone else's, your best version, then seriously pay attention and let's go on a journey together. Free your mind.
Free your mind.
Also, I've created a visual guide that you may want to grab before we start. It breaks down all of the various pieces to this equation, and anyway, it's really helpful. And if you want that, just check the video description for the link. Okay, so first we have the question itself, and let's deconstruct that piece by piece, and we'll put it all back together at the end. So let's start with some definitions. How do I become the best version of myself? Myself, what does that even mean? So I'll occasionally look back at photos of myself and literally think to myself, like, who was that guy? So I think this is where we start. Let's just say that when I say me or myself for the rest of this video, what I'm talking about is me in the present moment. That's important, and we'll come back to that. Okay, so back to the question. How do I become the best version of myself? Best version. Let's look at that for a second. So I think there's a very important implication here. When we say best version of myself, that actually implies something separate from myself, right? So you have myself, me, which is essentially me in this present moment. And then there's also this other version of me, this more idealized version that exists in a future moment. Well, so when I think about this, so we've got me in the present moment, and then there's the person I want to be in the next moment. So let's just say that there's me and the me that I want to be. Now, I think this is an extremely important distinction, maybe the most important distinction of this entire video, because conceptually, now we're not just looking at one thing, we're looking at two things, the me and the me that I want to be. So then I think when we say, I want to be the best version of myself, what we're really saying is that I am me, but that's not who I want to be. Who I want to be is the me that I want to be. I told you guys to pay attention. I'm going to say that again just in case. I think that when we say, I want to be the best version of myself, how do I become the best version of myself? What we're really saying is, I am me, but that's not who I want to be. Who I want to be is the me that I want to be. Now, let's consider all the implications of this, because there are some very important implications here. So first, this implies that whatever me is, we are not fully in control of it, right? Because if we were, then me and the me that I want to be, they would simply be the same thing. If we were fully in control of ourselves, then we would all go to the gym and have six-packs and instantly develop any sort of habit that we deem to be positive and beneficial. And we'd all have the courage to chase our dreams and not only develop strong moral convictions, but actually believe them. But that's not what happens. So how can we possibly think that we're fully in control of ourselves? So let's assume that we're actually not fully in control of ourselves. Pause for a second. Forget whatever you know for just 1 second. You are not fully in control of yourself. How does that statement make you feel? Seriously, pause the video for just a few seconds and ask yourself, how does that make you feel? And be honest. Okay, so for most people, as it was for me, the idea that we are not in control of ourselves, we don't instinctively like that idea. And to that I ask you, why is the idea that you are not fully in control of yourself, why is that uncomfortable? Why is that necessarily bad? I'm not telling you why. I'm asking you to consider this yourself. Seriously, why not pause the video for a bit and consider this before you continue? Why is the idea that you are not fully in control of yourself uncomfortable when it's true? In any case, for reasons that I will let you explore, most of us instinctively find ourselves wanting to fight that idea. And I think that if you're really trying to grow, you will need to tear down everything that you think you know and start from scratch. It's just part of the process, and you will need to do that many, many times. Burn it all down and rise from those ashes. Guys, you must question everything, especially that which you least think to question. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to necessarily change your position on things, but to grow, you must question everything, especially the things that you don't want to question. So I think the idea that we are fully in control of ourselves, it's one of those walls that you need to tear down, question, and decide for yourself how you want to reconstruct it. Okay, so let's keep playing. So what I'd ask you to do next, and you can pause the video again if you want, is think or say to yourself, I am not fully in control of myself, and really believe it. Again, maybe just pause the video for a few seconds. Okay, how does that make you feel? So for most people, believing that you are not fully in control of yourself, it feels like you're conceding to weakness. So if you're one of the people who feels that, and this was my experience, I think it's important to understand that that's all rooted in the world that you think you know. And so that is a conditioned reaction based on the rules of that world. So if you're really tearing down the walls, in a lot of cases, you actually get to make your own rules. And I think this is one of them. And by the way, you don't just arbitrarily create rules. I think you create rules by understanding things differently. And so think about it. Admitting that you are not fully in control of yourself when it's true is actually a strong acknowledgement. It's not a weak one, right? Because after all, isn't a powerful acknowledgement one that we make when we know something to be true, especially when we don't want it to be true? I think this is so important. For me, the idea that I was fully in control of myself was actually preventing me from being more in control of myself. Well, I think because until you acknowledge that you are not fully in control of yourself, you cannot truly acknowledge that there is a me and a me that I want to be. So I think that acknowledging that we are not fully in control of ourselves is what gives us the capacity to understand that there is a me and a me that I want to be, and this is an extremely powerful acknowledgement on the path to becoming your best version. Okay, so we've covered a bit of distance. Let's just quickly recap what we're working with so far. So we have the me and the me that I want to be. The me is who I am in this present moment, and the me that I want to be is who I want to be in the next moment. Because I am not fully in control of myself, I am not already the me that I want to be. It's easy enough, right? So let's keep moving. Now, consider this. Those two separate me's are both endpoints on a spectrum. So on one end, you have me, and on the other end, you have the me that I want to be. So maybe when we say that we're trying to become our best versions, maybe a better way to look at that question is to say, how can I shorten the distance between me and the me that I want to be? Well, considering that these are two parts of the same whole, two endpoints, maybe those two me's, they are both you after all, maybe the key to shortening that gap is to authentically understand them better. And so I think first, let's break down me, and then we'll break down the me that I want to be. So if we break down me, I think there's two parts to that. We've got who I think I am and who I really am. And now what's the key to shortening the gap here? Well, I've given this a lot of thought, and I think the key is authenticity. And so how do we define authenticity here? Well, I think authenticity, at least in relation to me, is effectively the distance between who you think you are and who you really are. Again, these are two separate parts of the same thread, who I think I am and who I really am. That is to say that if these two things were the same thing, then you would be 100% authentic. Obviously, you're not. And so I think you guys can all relate to this, right? We all know someone who thinks they're one thing, but their true nature reveals them to be something else. These are inauthentic people. Now, here's the thing. It's extremely easy to see that in other people. It's extremely hard to see that in ourselves. And that inauthentic person that we're using as an example, they probably have no idea that they're inauthentic, but they are. So maybe you are too, and you just don't know it. You probably are. And to be able to observe your own inauthenticity is how you can become more authentic in the first place. So how do you shorten the gap between who I think I am and who I really am? How do you find your authentic me? You may think that you want to be healthy, but if you're always failing to consistently eat healthy or go to the gym, do you really want to be healthy? I think the most important factor in knowing your true me is to stop seeking external validation specifically for your ideas. So I remember when I first started on my journey, the biggest thing that held me back from living authentically was my dependence on external validation of what me was. The perceptions that people held of me was more important than the reality of me. Who I thought I was more important than who I really was. Maybe think about that for a second. Now, have you ever read a book or gone on a specific diet, maybe did CrossFit, and you feel better as a result? You feel like you learned something, and you immediately begin to preach to everyone you know that they need to read the same book or follow that same strategy or try that same diet or do CrossFit. So most people, when they start their self-development journey, one of the first things that they do is they start posting inspirational quotes to all of their social networks. I know that I did this. And that's because we desire for others to validate this person that we desperately think that we want to be more than we truly desire to be that person. So why do we do this? External validation. We're conditioned to thirst for it. To us, something can't be good unless other people, unless our exterior believes it, values it to be good as well. And so we are conditioned to value external validation higher than self-validation. Now, this may sound easy, but this is extremely hard to process because society makes us so dependent on external validation, so dependent that most of us don't even know what self-validation is. We can hear the words, we can understand the implications, but to actually exist in a state where external validation is less important than self-validation, well, that's a real challenge. I'll also note that I say less important because I do think that external validation is important. You should care what other people think when it comes to certain things, but generally speaking, that should almost always be less important than self-validation. So to put that another way, you should care what people think, but you shouldn't be a slave to what people think. So I think to understand me, very similarly to understanding the me that I want to be, means that you have to do something that you were never really given the tools to do, and that is to go inside yourself, to understand yourself. And that's almost impossible for a lot of people because, quite simply, society never wanted us to have those tools. So if you ask me, what is the best way to go inside ourselves, to understand ourselves, my answer is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but it's to understand your exterior. Understand those mechanisms, not only what external validation is, but why and how society has conditioned you to thirst for it in the first place. So I think you start with a thorough examination of your exterior, and you'll actually find in doing so that you'll start to shine a light on your interior without even necessarily having intended to do so in the first place. Isn't that interesting? And I'm going to break this down even further. So often when you hear people saying that they're trying to discover themselves, when we say we're trying to discover ourselves, it's almost as if we're trying to understand who I really am, as if that concept exists independently. But it is in understanding who I think I am that you can come to understand who I really am. So imagine a box buried in the ground beneath a few feet of dirt, right? And that box is who I really am. And the dirt is who I think I am. Now, you know the box is in the ground, but you can't see it. And just trying to see it won't do anything. And that's essentially what most of us are doing when we try to discover our true selves. We're trying to see a box that is covered in dirt. And to see the box, you have to remove the dirt first. And this is tricky. And so here's the best example that I can think of to help you here. Do you find yourself extremely dependent on external stimulus? So do you check your phone incessantly? Are you able to even do things like eat or go to the bathroom without it? Do you sleep next to it? Is it the first thing that you reach for in the morning? Maybe a better question is, does the idea of being alone seem frightening to you? Do you do everything that you possibly can to avoid being alone with your own thoughts? So if you live in society, which all of you watching this video do, the goal of society is basically to consume you. And this is a rather large and complex theme, but in summary, you are easier to consume when you exist externally to yourself, when you are unconscious of yourself. And so we are born into a world that does not want us to understand ourselves, that works to keep us existing in the external. Part of how it does that is to convince us that our internal is a terrifying place, is a scary place. Being alone feels scary to us for reasons that we don't understand, or maybe better to say, have never even thought to question. This is precisely what I mean when I say that we were never given the tools to question, to go inside. You have to develop those tools yourself. And to develop those tools, I think you have to first understand that you can, in fact, develop those tools in the first place, and you have to want to develop them. And I think that to develop those tools, you just have to get to the point where you just know, where you just feel that something is not right. Something is not quite right. So to develop those tools, what's worked best for me has specifically been to observe anything and everything external to me that produces some sort of emotion, some sort of reaction. The stronger, the better. And to question it, to really, really pick it apart. And I say external because, again, that's what gives you the objective basis. Much in the same way that day doesn't exist without night. Conceptually speaking, your internal does not exist without an external. And so I think the better that you understand your external, the better that you can understand your internal. And so I'll give you a good example here. So in the past, when my friends shared their accomplishments to social media, on a surface level, I would feel and act as if I was happy for that person, while on a root level, I would feel jealousy. And even though I felt jealousy, I wouldn't acknowledge it. So I would act and feel like I wasn't jealous, even though I was. And I think a lot of people can relate to this one, feeling jealousy on a root level, but not consciously acknowledging or questioning why, and instead just pretending like you don't feel jealousy when you do. And when people close to me failed, on a surface level, I was supportive and compassionate, but on a root level, I actually wanted them to fail. And so when I looked closer at this, like really picked this apart, identified what I was feeling on a root level and why I was feeling that way, why I was acting as if I didn't feel these things. I think in doing that, I came to know myself better. I think the gap between who I think I am and who I really am became shorter, and I became more authentic. I realized that I secretly wanted people around me to fail because it made me feel better about myself, because I was always measuring myself and comparing myself to others, to the outside, and realizing that it was bad, understanding that on a root level, that it wasn't helping me. That's what allowed me to make the fundamental change. And that's when I started measuring myself and comparing myself, to my inside. So I no longer compare myself to others. I see myself in others. And so now I feel genuine happiness when I see other people succeed because I see myself succeeding. I am supportive and compassionate when I see others fail because I see myself failing. Now, here's another observation. If you think that really knowing yourself is a simple process, or if you already think to yourself, like, I already know myself, I'm completely authentic, that's probably a huge warning sign that you are still asleep. Okay, so we just covered how to better authentically understand me, which again is about shortening the gap between who I think I am and who I really am. Now, the other part of this is that you also have to really authentically know who is the me that I want to be, which I think breaks down into who I think I want to be and who I really want to be. So again, if those two things were the same thing, then the me that I want to be would be 100% authentic and accurate. But again, that's an ideal, and ideals are impossible. So let's just focus on shortening the gap between who I think I want to be and who I really want to be. Now, this is, again, extremely difficult for most people because society generally has its own plans for what it wants you to be. And it's very easy to confuse who I think I want to be with who I really want to be. So I'll share my own personal experience and maybe you can relate. So growing up in New York, if I wanted to be successful, which back then had been defined for me to mean just making lots of money, that's what success was. It basically meant that I had to be a professional, and ideally it was between banker, doctor, and lawyer, since those were the careers most commonly associated with making lots of money. Now, at a very young age, I showed incredible ability with 3D graphics and animation. Around age 15, I was doing stuff in my computer class that was literally like light years ahead of my classmates. And I think that if a single person had encouraged me or knew to encourage me, told me that I could make a career doing those things, that today I'd probably be an amazing video game designer. And that's not a regret, that's just an observation. Now, my parents especially, and God bless them, because they were always only doing their best, but they just didn't know how to encourage anything that they didn't perceive as having a future that involved lots of money. Because again, that's how success was defined for me, that's how success was defined for them, as it is for most of society. And so consciously and subconsciously, they steered me away from my passions and towards their narrowly defined interpretation of success, which was any professional career with a high salary that makes lots of money. And so, playing on computers wasn't perceived by my parents as something that could reasonably lead to making lots of money, to success. And so they knowingly and unknowingly discouraged it. Now, to make a long story short, I spent 5 years completing my undergraduate degree in economics. So after graduation, I was going to start a business with my dad. I made a website for that business. And that was my first time making a website since I was about 15 years old. And I loved building that website. And so then a whole bunch of other stuff happened, and my dad canceled the idea to start a business with me, and he gave me 2 weeks to figure out my life. And so while I was trying to figure out my life, I got an offer to make a website for someone else who paid me just a few $100. And that site took me 2 months to build. So if you do the math, I probably made around 5 cents per hour. But the idea that someone was paying me for something that I created, combined with an absolute love for creating things with technology. And maybe I didn't fully understand it at the time, but I had found my passion. Or maybe better to say that I had reignited a passion that I had previously been steered away from by society. And so within a few years, I was one of the most sought after designers in the entire industry. I was charging up to $8,000 per site. And I would later start my own business. And again, currently we have over 40 employees and we're not anywhere near close to done growing. But this isn't a video about finding your passion. And my point in all of this is that society wanted me to choose between banker, doctor, or lawyer. Those were the options that I was given. And so I chose banker, fully believing that that was who I really wanted to be. 5 years and a degree in economics that I will never use. And then with one $100 website that took me 2 months to complete, that was when I realized that who I really wanted to be was not a banker, but a designer. And listen, the me that I want to be involves a lot more things. This example is just the occupational part. The me that I want to be also has expressive, physical, and mental components. And you've got to work to authentically understand those parts as well. And that's not easy because society already has plans for you. And I won't get too deep here, but what I will say is that society is most concerned with making a profit off of you, with consuming you. Young males, for example, are taught, I was taught, that we need to accumulate extreme material wealth to have fulfillment, to have any value whatsoever. And I believe a man should seek to look good and present themselves well to the world and to be successful and find achievement, and in doing so develop confidence and be intelligent. It's just that society has radically and perversely redefined what all of these things mean, and then taught you to want these things for the wrong reasons, and then tries to sell you the shortcuts to their obtainment. So I think we are born asleep, unconscious cogs in a machine that's just designed to consume us. It's also screwed up that you almost have to just laugh a little bit here. So guys, I think that this is so important that you at least consider that the me that I want to be may in fact be inauthentic, may in fact be extremely inauthentic. That is to say that there may be a very big gap between who I think I want to be and who I really want to be. And so to shorten that gap means really opening your eyes. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling, opening your eyes when they've always been closed. And you may even start opening them, feel uncomfortable, and then decide to close them again. And I think that most people do opt to do that. Again, this idea isn't for everyone. And so here's what I can tell you. I think that if your me that I want to be is something along the lines of a famous rich person with a huge mansion and lots of cars, if you truly want to become your best version, you are probably someone that needs to do a bit of eye-opening. But if you're content that way, just keep your eyes closed. I mean, you're going to keep them closed regardless. But you will never be your best version if what you're chasing is an inauthentic, false construction of society. Again, this is stuff that you guys need to work out and figure out on your own. Nobody on this planet other than yourself can determine for you who it is that you really want to be. And by the way, you don't have to know exactly. In fact, you can't know exactly. You just have to take a really good guess and be brave enough to trust that the outcome is always going to be what it was supposed to be. This is another complex topic that I'll eventually make a video on, but for now, you may want to contemplate this last point on your own for a little bit. Okay, let's do another quick recap. So you have me and the me that I want to be. Because you are not fully in control of yourself, me and the me that I want to be are effectively two separate things. Me can be broken down into who I think I am and who I really am. The me that I want to be can be broken down into who I think that I want to be and who I really want to be. Okay, so now let's put this all together by looking at how do we shorten the gap, the distance between me and the me that I want to be, so that you can actually make progress towards becoming your best version. I believe that the key here is effectively in establishing good habits. Your good habits are what carry you from me to the me that I want to be. Now, this is another extremely complex theme, and I know that this video is already a bit long, so I'm going to cover this topic in more detail in another video, and you'll find a link to that video in this description. But to summarize, I think that you develop good habits by truly understanding the reason you do things. Again, this is another another theme that sounds simple. You can hear the words and understand the implications, but true understanding of the things that you do is more than likely something that 99% of the people watching this video do not have. And you will never consistently do something that you don't enjoy doing, that you don't love doing. And I think we come to love what we do only when we understand why we do it. And so you'll know when you've truly developed a good habit, because it won't require discipline. It will be effortless. True good habits become you. And it is our good habits that help us bridge the gap between me and the me that I want to be. So guys, let's tie this all together in one final recap. Here is what I think you need to understand, the path, if you will, to truly become your best version. There is me in this present moment, and there is the me that I want to be in the next moment. The reason that you are not already your best version, the me that you want to be, is because you are not fully in control of yourself, which is a powerful acknowledgement. So me can be broken down into who I think I am and who I really am. And you can shorten the distance between the two by more authentically understanding who I think I am. And oddly enough, in the process of that is how you will come to better understand and know who I really am. Your best version, the me that I want to be, can be broken down into who I think I want to be and who I really want to be. And you can shorten the distance between the two by more authentically understanding who I think I want to be. And oddly enough, again, in the process of that is how you will come to better know and understand who I really want to be. Who I think I am and who I think I want to be are both rooted in the world of external validation, in societal expectation. And to more authentically understand them, you must observe them. And it is in understanding them that you will come to better understand who I really am and who I really want to be. These are simultaneous processes. Understanding who I think I want to be and who I really want to be, using authenticity to shorten the distance between the two, allows you to better understand the me that I want to be. And it is only when you better understand me and the me that I want to be that you can actually begin to work to authentically establish good habits, which are what will carry you from me to the me that I want to be. If you don't first authentically understand me and the me that I want to be, you will struggle to create good habits. So really work to understand those things first. Now, to develop good habits, you must understand the why of the habits that you're seeking to establish. Understand that you will never consistently do something unless you love that thing, unless you find the way to love that thing. Good habits do not require discipline because they are effortless, because you become your good habits. And in doing so, you will become your best version. Hey guys, so I really hope that you were able to benefit and relate to this video. I put my soul into this stuff. I think most of you guys can see that. And I want to remind you that you don't need me, you don't need anyone to show you the way. And that's absolutely not what I'm trying to do here. So for those of you that are new to the channel, I've spent a lot of years experiencing and then later observing this path that I feel that we're on. And I hope that in sharing my observations as authentically as I'm able to, that you can relate and that you can see yourself in me and in my words, and that you can find some clarity there. I have nothing to sell you, but I will ask you for a favor if that's okay. And that is that if you enjoyed this video, can you give it a like? And in the comments, if this video is something that helped you to realize something, anything, can I ask you to share? I think that there's so much inauthenticity in this world, and I feel suffocated by it. I think it makes us feel isolated. And so I think that it would be amazing if, again, if you realized something as a result of this video, if you shared it for everyone else to see. Also, make sure to check out the video description for how to download a complete visual summary of everything that I just talked about. This is a lot to take in, and so I think the visual can really help. And if you want to watch me work towards becoming my best version, make sure to subscribe and make sure to turn notifications on. So in addition to these focus videos, I've also got a vlog that I think you guys can really benefit from. There, I'm basically living all of the things that I talk about in my focused videos. And I think that it's the stories sometimes that reveal more truth than the data. So if that resonates with you, if this video resonates with you, seriously, we're creating a community here. So click subscribe and make sure that you turn notifications on by clicking that little bell icon. Bonus points if you also want to follow me on Instagram. I'm at NelsonQuest. I'll put a link to my Instagram profile in the description for this video as well. Guys, again, I hope you were able to benefit from this video. I've been working on it for many months. I'll see you guys in the next video.